Thank you, Ed. Let's do our new memory verse, the first one that Heinz hasn't picked. Galatians 5:1. It was for freedom that Christ set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to a yoke of slavery. Galatians 5:1. Okay, when we're getting ready to celebrate the 4th of July, our independence, and all those things, and I get to thinking about that, and I'm always reminded of this little cartoon that I saw. It was a guy coming out of the Office of Naturalization and Immigration, and he had just gotten his papers, and he comes out and he says with a heavy accent, "I'm free, I'm free." And there's a little boy standing there and he goes, "So what? I'm 4." Okay? And so we're going to look at this thing of freedom. We've been wandering around the book of Romans, and we're in Romans 6, verse 18, and it's an interesting statement because we're looking at free or slave. So 6:18 says, "And having been freed from sin, you became slaves of righteousness." Now, isn't that interesting? You traded your freedom for slavery. It says when you became free, you actually became a slave. Now, if you go to verse 20, it says, "For when you were slaves of sin, you were free in regard to righteousness." Meaning that when you gave your life to Jesus Christ, we'll back up, when you gave your life to Jesus Christ, you became free from sin, which means you never sinned again. No, does not mean that. I just thought I'd say it to see if you'd all sit there and just nod your heads and say, okay, that's... But we don't become free from sin in the sense, but rather, if a person is free from something, it no longer is master over them. Okay? And like right now, Frankie's not here. And that means I can fix any food I want at any time. I've eaten at 10 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock at night, when I finally got through with all the stuff I was doing and got the meal fixed and all that kind of stuff. I can fix things that I want, and I can do that. I'm free. But she's coming home. And I better get everything back where it belongs. And so we have that freedom, but there's actually something else that always controls us when we do that. The reason I ate at 10 o'clock at night is because that's when I finished doing all the other stuff that I was trying to get done. And so it would not be fair to inflict that on her. And so what happens is when we have freedom, and here it says that when we are free from sin, sin no longer is master over me. Then when I gave my life to Jesus Christ, I became a slave to righteousness. So that is now master over me. That's now what should be controlling my life. Doing the right thing in Jesus Christ. And so my life should change. He says, back there in verse 20, when sin was master over you, you were free from righteousness. You didn't do the right thing. You didn't have to. Why? Because sin was your master. It's kind of a neat little thing that he puts together here, and I'll give you this little chart of sin and righteousness, two opposite things. And he says, if you are a slave to sin, then you're free from righteousness. But if you're free from sin, then you are a slave to righteousness. They reverse. Here's the picture. When you become free, we'll just take the thing of freedom, period. We assume that you can do anything you want. But that's not true. There are always something that brings in boundaries, parameters for us, that we can't just be free to do anything we want to. Government, by very nature, puts limits on us and on people. And they will attempt, no matter what government it is, to keep restricting freedoms more and more and more. It makes a difference what government is, and just not ours, all of them. That is the very nature of that. You get to thinking about, that's mankind, that's our nature. In the Bible, they start with the Old Testament. Very simple, here are the rules. By the time you get to the time of Jesus, the Pharisees have added 144,000 extra laws. I think about what our country started with, very few laws. Can you imagine how many laws there are today if you were to take all the federal laws, and put them in a book, just normal binding? I bet this room would not hold all of those books. Because you begin to look and say, this agency has their own rules, this agency has their rules, this agency has their rules. We by nature, and every time we get together, we make more rules. The saying is, there are only two things that are certain in life, and they are death and taxes. But every time Congress gets together, death does not get worse. Okay? Because we add more stuff. That's just our very nature as human beings. We will be slaves to something, even in the midst of our freedom. And I get to thinking about that and think that, Jesus came to set us free, right? And yet, how many people become enslaved to something else? For instance, we look at around us, some people are enslaved to money. Money is master over their life. Money drives them in everything that they do. Other people, it's their job. They will do anything and everything for their job. Some of us, and I'm going to go from preaching to meddling, some of us maybe it is our houses, our homes. You buy a house in Nevada and then you decide you want to make it look nice. And so then you start planting stuff. And now you got to keep the stuff all green. So now you got to water it. But the soil is so poor you have to fertilize it. And when you fertilize it, it grows faster, so now you got to cut it more. And pretty soon you find out all your waking hours are trying to keep that house looking nice. And you have become a slave to your own house. You can't even go on vacation, because if you leave for 2 weeks, it'll die in Nevada. Okay? Well, maybe it's fear that is master over your life. You're going to lock your doors at all times, even when you're home outside and all that kind of stuff, but you keep those doors locked because fear drives us. And it can own our life. And so we can say, I'm free, but that can drive our lives. For some people, it's alcohol. You know the old saying, some people it's drugs. They have to have those drugs. That owns them. They become slaves to that. The old saying was, you take an alcoholic, blindfold them, put them on an airplane, drop them any place in the world, and inside of 4 hours, they will have a drink in their hand. You take a druggie, blindfold them, fly them any place in the world. Inside of 2 hours, they'll have a fix. You take a Baptist, you move them across town, it takes them 7 years to find another church. Okay? What drives you? What owns you is that question. What is master in my life? Jesus. You say, well, nothing. Nothing is master in my life. Jesus was speaking in John 8:31 and 32. He says, so Jesus was saying to those Jews who had believed in him, if you continue in my word, then you are truly disciples of mine, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free. Now usually those last little things are put over, actually libraries you find them over it. You shall know the truth shall make you free. But what it's saying is, Jesus is saying, you guys are slaves to the law, Old Testament law and all that. He says, those, you notice who he's talking to, it says, those who believed in him. He says, if you continue in my word, if you do that, if you follow through and become truly a disciple of mine, that'll set you free. You will be free from all of that. The Jews respond in the next verse, we've never been slaves to anybody. How can you tell us we'll be free? And Jesus then says, if you sin, you're a slave to sin, whether you like it or not. And then he tells them this, so if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed. And I look at people's lives and think, you're not free just because you live in America. You're a slave maybe to your automobile. You know, always working on it, always fixing it, keeping it shined up. I think of a pastor that I had back in college, and he had this certain car, and that was his baby. Bright yellow with a white Landau top, for those that remember those days. Okay, a Gran Torino, and that was his baby. And his wife said that he washed it every week. And then one day he's sitting at a stoplight in Kansas City, Missouri. A car in front of him, and a car he sees approaching very quickly from the back. And he says to his wife's name was Velma, he says, Velma, hold on, we're about to be hit. Just that time, the gal behind slammed into him, drove his car, even though the brakes were on, into the car in front of it, and just accordioned his car. The gal in front gets out, starts screaming at Richard, this guy's name. What were you thinking? He goes, I think you want to talk to the person behind us. But his car that he had worked so hard and that was so important, suddenly wasn't. That thing that was master over his life. He was not truly free. Part of the problem for us, even as Christians, is that Jesus comes to set us free. Now he's specifically talking about the law, and we'll get that in just a minute, the Old Testament law. But I think how many times we as Christians become free only to be enslaved by something else? That something else drives our lives, and we become slaves to that. And that's what I want us to look at this morning. How free are you? And are you a slave to something? Or would you have given the answer that these around him answered with, we're not slaves to anything. We've never been slaves. Really? Jesus says, if you've sinned, you're a slave to that, whether you like it or not. And we'll look at why in just a few minutes. And so Jesus tells them that you'll be free. And what Jesus wants to do is to come and to make us free people. This is the freedom he wants to give us. Romans 8:2 says, right there, Romans 8:2, says, for the law of the Spirit of life in Christ Jesus has set you free from the law of sin and death. What Jesus comes to set you free from is the law of sin and the law of death. Meaning, in the Old Testament, what the law came to do was to show people they were sinners. But Jesus comes to say, I've set you free from that law. Let me give you the illustration. The year was 1969. I bought a car. I was in the Navy. I left it in Colorado, went back to Maryland, my home base. January comes. I fly back and I pick up my car. First time that I've ever going to drive it any place. And I'm driving it from Denver to Vallejo, California. I leave Denver on I-25. Speed limit, 70 miles an hour. Woohoo! I get to Wyoming. Speed limit, 75 miles an hour. Ooh, we're doing better. I get to Salt Lake, spend the night there, and the speed limit out across the Salt Lake area out there after you get out of Salt Lake City, 80 miles an hour. Hoo-hoo! What is Nevada gonna be? And I drive into Wendover. This is when it wasn't all interstate. Some of it was, some of it wasn't. And I drive into Wendover, and I get out of Wendover, and here's the speed limit. It says resume speed. What? Well, the last one I saw was 80. So I drove 80, and then you drove into every little town, you know. Elko, you had to drive through it. You had to drive through everyone. 25 miles an hour. You felt like you could just leave your car, run to the other end of town, wait for your car to get there, get in, and drive off. I get to California, it goes back down to 70. I get to California, and I said, man, that was the weirdest thing. I get out of town and it'd say resume speed. And this guy named Gary Bones said, oh, that's because there's no speed limit in Nevada. You can drive as fast as you want to. I said, really? Because I'm going back to Maryland. No law? I've been set free from the law of speed limits? Hoo-hoo. Now, some of you drive that way anyway, but this is when it was legal, okay? And so I get out of here. I get out of Sparks, and I'm headed out someplace. I probably got through Fernley and got out of Fernley, and I'm out there someplace, Lovelock, Winnemucca, someplace out there, and I thought, I wonder how fast my car will go. It started shaking pretty good at about 110, you know, and so I slowed down to 90. I'm driving 90, 110 miles an hour, and I'm not breaking any law at all. Isn't that incredible? There is no law. I've been set free from that law. That's not the rule now, but it was then. Jesus comes to set me free from the law of sin and death. That's even more important. I am free from that. You said, well, you're going to die, but I'm not going to spiritually die. I will continue on living for Jesus Christ. Okay? Then the verse that is our memory verse is, it was for freedom that Christ set us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to the yoke of slavery. Now, this specifically is talking about don't try to live under the Old Testament law. Here's how that plays out today. I hear Christians say, I live by the 10 Commandments. That's putting yourself back under the law. That's not what Jesus came to do. He came to set you free from that. And he says, don't get stuck under that. Because once you accept that, then you accept the rest of the Old Testament, and there's a lot of laws you don't want to be subject to. Okay? Such as, let me just give you some. I bet most of you are breaking the law sitting right where you're sitting by what you're wearing. Old Testament law says you cannot have mixed fibers in your garments. So if you were to look at the tag on the back, and it says, if it doesn't say 100% cotton, 100% whatever, you just broke the Jewish law. Some of you are going to go out, and you've had surf and turf. Okay? Now, I had poor man's surf and turf this when Frankie was gone. You know what poor man's surf and turf is? Okay, first of all, do you know what surf and turf is? Okay, steak and lobster. Poor man's surf and turf is chicken and tilapia. Okay, but that's what I had this week. And so it says here that he set us free, and you can't have lobster. There's all kinds of stuff you can't eat that you probably have eaten. And he says Jesus came to set us, don't go get under that law again. I think it's important for us as Christians to recognize that Jesus set us free. He wants to set us free in the soul. Don't go be subject again to something else. The problem is we hand our lives over to something else and we become slaves of something else. Time. You know, when I was in the military, I used to listen to WWV, which is the time thing, and or CHB out of Canada, and I had an Accutron watch, and I set that watch nearly once a week because I didn't want it a second or two off. And that drove my life. That was master of what I did. And then my watch got stolen. Okay? So those things that sometimes drive our life, God goes, you know, I'm going to have to remove that from your life because this is what's driving you. And so he takes it from us. He says, don't get back under a yoke of slavery. Don't let anything be what drives your life, except for one thing. One thing needs to be master of our life. That's Jesus Christ. He needs to be master of our life. The Apostle Paul said that he was a slave of Jesus Christ. He uses the same word that we've used throughout much of the sermon today. And so you say, okay, so I can go out and do anything I want to. Frankie was gone, I could do anything I want to within reason. Just 12 verses later, after Galatians 5:1, is 5:13, it says this, "For you are called to freedom, brethren, only do not turn your freedom into an opportunity for the flesh, but through love, serve," or slave, back to that word slave, "one another." It's that same word, like I said in Greek. This is just a verb form of it, and slave for us is a noun. We can slave in the kitchen, I guess. We can make it a verb, but we often don't. And so what it's saying here is, okay, you've been set free. You're not bound by all those rules. Don't use it as an excuse. Don't use it as an opportunity. Well, I'm free, so I can go do something else. Frankie was gone didn't mean that I could go out and buy 4 six-packs and slug them down. Okay? Can't stand the taste of beer anyway, so you don't have to worry about that. But you see, that doesn't give me an excuse to go do something that I wouldn't do if Frankie was around. Instead, since I've been set free, I need to do certain things. And it says here, it says that what we should do, through love, serve one another. Frankie's gone. She normally does the laundry. I did the laundry, and it's like the Lord goes, you know what? You not only need to do the laundry, but you need to do a little bit of ironing, and you need to haul off and wash those sheets and do all the stuff so when she comes home, she didn't have to do that. Well, that's her job. I'm the cook. I'm the guy that does the shopping. She does the laundry. Okay, Lord, I'll do the laundry. Serve one another. If I'm truly free, it should show up by the way that I serve. I'm a slave to somebody else. What an incredible oxymoron. You know what an oxymoron is? It's a guy with diminished mental capacities and an oxygen tent. Right? No? Okay, an oxymoron means you take two opposites, you put them together. That's what this is all about. That we are slaves to Jesus Christ. And since I'm a slave to Him, I'm free from those other things. I am truly free. And because I'm truly free, I should serve somebody else. The way that plays out in society is we have all these people demanding their rights in our society because we're a free society. Never saying, I demand my responsibilities. You see, as a Christian, I'm free. But because I'm free, I should serve you guys. Because you're free, you should serve one another also. So how free are you? Do you really serve one another? One more time, parallel verse, 1 Peter 2:16, act as free men And do not use your freedom as a covering for evil, but use it as bondservants. That word bondservant is that word slave again, of God. And so when you have that freedom, it says you have to act like you're a free man. But there should be constraints. Don't use that as an excuse for, well, I can do anything I want to. That happens too. We know most the term of legalism within churches. But there's another term, it's called antinomianism. And it means you're against the law. And the idea is, I don't have any rules, so I can do anything I want to. That's not true either. I must serve Jesus Christ. Act as a slave of God. Do people look at you and go, there is a Christian, I can tell by the way she behaves and acts and speaks and all of those things. We were up in Northern California here just a short time ago, and we got to talking to the guy who was the owner of the hotel, and looked at him and I said, I just got to ask you, are you a Christian? And the guy goes, yeah, I am. I said, I thought so. The way that you acted, the way you spoke, and the way you treated us spoke that you were a Christian. You see, he was a slave of righteousness. Use it as a bond servant, a slave of God. Very last verse. We need to watch out, because in 1 Peter 2:19 it says, it's talking about these certain people within their fellowship, it says, promising them freedom while they themselves are slaves of corruption. And here's the key word, the key part. For by what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. Okay? By what you're overcome, this is what enslaves you. 1960s. There was this new thing that came out. This drug had been actually around for a little while. And you probably know it, know of this drug. It's, let me think of what it is. You know it as LSD. I think it's disergic acid dimethyl, that's it. That's what it is. Lysergic acid dimethyl, okay? But you know it as LSD. There's this guy named Timothy Leary. Should have been leery of him just because of his name, okay? And so he said, you take this stuff and it will make you free. I mean, it'll free up your mind. You get it in the proper doses, it'll just do wonders for you. The problem was, the stuff never leaves your body. It is unique in the fact that it will stay there just like mercury. Okay? So once it's in your system, you can have a flashback 20 years later because you can't get rid of it. And it didn't free people up. It enslaved them. They did all kinds of crazy things. Walked out in front of trains, jumped out of windows, because the hallucinations were off and rolling. And he kept going, man, this is the best stuff in the whole world. Frees your mind. Man, this verse comes to mind. Promising them freedom while they themselves are slaves of corruption. For by what a man is overcome, by this he is enslaved. So what are you overcome by? You say nothing. I'm not overcome by anything. I look and I think about this next generation. You know what they're overcome by? Technology. You ask a kid to leave his phone, and withdrawal symptoms begin to happen. You know? I can't leave my phone. You know? What happens if somebody's trying to call me? You walk into a store and you see people texting. You know? Technology owns their life and they don't even know it. Because it's really slick. Now, I have seen a cell phone used correctly in a grocery store. Yeah, I have. I actually have seen it used correctly. There's a guy on the phone and he's going, okay, I've got the red one and I've got the white one. Which one am I supposed to bring home again? That is the correct way you use a cell phone in a grocery store, okay? But other than that, I mean, we just can't do it. I would challenge you that become technologically enslaved and don't realize it. See if you can go a week without your cell phone. Say, I can't do that. I have a cell phone. It's at home. I don't even have it on me. I usually drive without it. Isn't that amazing? Most people forget their cell phone and they turn around and go back and get it. I'm not saying you're addicted. I'm saying yes, you are. Okay? We need to recognize there are all kinds of things that own us and we don't even know it. Now the question is, do we know that Jesus owns us? And we have been set free in this world. Free from the law of sin and death, free from all kinds of other things. I look and my computer went down here a while back and I thought, oh man, and then I thought, you know what? I actually lived a few years without one. It's okay. It does not have to own my life. TV doesn't have to own my life. My cell phone doesn't have to own my life. None of those things have to own my life. What has to own my life is Jesus Christ. I need to be his slave because he sets me free from everything else. Let me ask you, how free are you? We're going to celebrate the 4th of July, freedom. But I look and think, how free really is America? Or are they actually slaves to stuff they don't even know they're slaves to? And so I hope that when you celebrate the 4th of July, you celebrate not only the independence of this country. Great thing. I'm grateful that I lived here. I'm so grateful I live now. But I'm mostly grateful for Jesus Christ, who set me free. He gives freedom that is better than anything the United States can give me. Go out and be free. Let's pray, then we'll sing, and then we'll sing again. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for letting us be here. Father, I pray if there's anyone here who does not know Jesus Christ, does not know the freedom that comes in him, I pray this morning they might come to know Jesus, Lord and Savior of their life, and then become a slave of righteousness, become a slave to God in the most healthy sense. And Lord, for those of us who have been set free by Jesus and then turn around and get entangled by all kinds of other stuff, remind us that you set us free from that. Lord, may our lives say that we truly act as free men. We live as free men and women, not because we're Americans, but because we're Christians. Lord, I think about people around the world who are free even in an oppressive society because they belong to you. And Lord, I think about people that are here, that are in a free society, but are slaves to all kinds of things. Lord, I pray that our lives would say, we are truly free.